Hello and welcome to the Famous Matches of Magic channel. Today we'll be presenting the 2015 Vintage Championship. Today's match will be between Brian Kelley piloting his own take on Oath of Druids and Robert Greene piloting a deck known as Grixis Thieves. You're in for a treat. Before we get down to the match, let's take a quick look at what their decks are. Brian Kelley's Oath of Druids deck is a little different than the standard Oath of Druids deck, as he has an Auriok Salvager's Kill with Black Lotus and Pyrite Spellbomb that can combo for infinite damage. He also has a Dragon Lord Jamoka and a Grizzlebrand as potential Oath of Druids targets. Now Greene was bringing the spice with this Grixis Thieves deck. He has 3 deck fade-ins against all the shops in the metagame. He can steal an early threat as well as loot. He has Notion Thieves to steal that card draw. He has lots of permission with the main deck Mana Drains and Flusterstorms. This is one of the few Tinker decks taking advantage of Time Vault. This was a little bit of a rogue deck, so let's see if the Grixis Thieves deck can take down Kelley Oath. Let's head down to the match. Hello and welcome to game number 1 with Brian Kelley on the play. He starts with a Gitaxian Probe revealing Force of Will, Jace the Mind Sculptor, Mana Drain, Flusterstorm, Mox Ruby, Volcanic Island, and Underground Sea. Now Brian Kelley does not have any lands. He has just a Mox and a Sensei's Divining Top. Robert Greene starts out with a bang with a Mox Ruby, Volcanic Island, and a Time Walk. He untaps, plays an Underground Sea, a Mox Emerald, and a turn 1 Jace the Mind Sculptor. Now here is a big decision point for Robert Greene here, as he is gonna plus that Jace the Mind Sculptor going to 5 and try to go for the ultimate early on here. This is a very rare occurrence in Vintage here. You most always want to go for Brainstorm. It is open deck lists. They know that he does not have any lightning bolts in Brian Kelley's deck, and he is going for the early ultimate since he doesn't want to play creatures into his Oath, and this is one of his few non-creature ultimates, but we'll see if it works out for him. Now Brian Kelley is going to activate that Sensei's Divining Top. See if he can find some lands, as he missed a land drop on his previous turn, and he finds the best land possible, a Tolarian Academy, followed by pretty much the best spell possible, a Ancestral Recall, which resolves. So everything is coming up Millhouse for Brian Kelley, hitting 3 fresh new cards, followed by a Ponder that was powered up by that Tolarian Academy. So everything is looking good, but he passes the turn back to Robert Greene. So let's see what Robert Greene can come up with. A Ponder of his own. So he is going to ponder up 3 cards there, and he puts them back on top, plays another Underground Sea. He is going to power up his Jace the Mind Sculptor, Fate Seal himself again, leave it on top, going to 7th Loyalty. So he is a 3 activations away from being able to ultimate and remove Brian Kelley's library from the game and potentially ending the game for him. Now Brian Kelley is going to take his turn. He just plays a Library of Alexandria and passes the turn to Robert Greene, who plays a Demonic Tutor. He has many options of what he can search up, but let's see what he is going to search up with that Demonic Tutor. And it appears what he is going to search for is a Snapcaster Mage. With that Snapcaster Mage, he can flash back a Time Walk, which will give him an extra activation with his Jace the Mind Sculptor. which is one turn closer from him able to activating the ultimate ability and exiling Brian Kelley's entire library from the game. This has definitely been an unorthodox line of play by Robert Greene here with the Jace the Mind Sculptor on turn 1. He could have been brainstorming from turn 1, but instead has gone from this plus ability. Who knows if this play will work out for him, but it is going to be close with this 9 loyalty. Let's see, what is Brian Kelley going to do now? He has a Dak Faden, the greatest thief in the multiverse, that can steal a Mox from Robert Greene, cutting off a lot of the mana. But what is Robert Greene going to do? Is he going to try to mana drain that Dak Faden? And it appears so. How much does Brian Kelley care? He has a lot of counter magic, so he is going to Flusterstorm that mana drain. Robert Greene has a Flusterstorm of his own, but he does not have any blue mana, so that Dak Faden is going to resolve and is probably going to steal one of the Moxen of Robert Greene. Brian Kelley then passes the turn back to the Grixis Thieves player. Robert Greene is getting closer and closer to ultimating that Jace. Brian Kelley is on borrowed time. He has the card advantage, but that Jace is on 9 loyalty. So this turn it will go to 11. He is going to try to resolve this Snapcaster Mage, which will then flash back that Time Walk. Let's see if Brian Kelley will counter this Snapcaster Mage, or if he will fight over the Time Walk, which will leave a creature in play for the Oath of Druids. And he is going after the Snapcaster Mage, not after the Time Walk. Now he has a Flusterstorm to protect the Force of Will, but he is able to stop the Snapcaster Mage, and all the card advantage of Brian Kelley is showing here, as all of the brainstorms that Robert Greene has been missing out is really starting to take his toll. Now he is on to 11 loyalty, so we have to go up to 13 next turn, and then he'll finally be able to ultimate. Now this may be too slow, but we will see. He has the other Force of Will, which would have been enough, but he did not have the blue card. He was only able to protect it one time. But we can see Brian Kelley still has a grip of cards here. So who is really the one winning? You know, Robert Greene has 11 loyalty on a Jace, but to me it looks like Brian Kelley is the one winning, and now he has a Pyrite Spellbomb, which is able to knock Jace down one turn. So this is not looking great for Robert Greene here, and he is going to push up Dak Faden to 2 loyalty for looting. So he is going to draw 2 and then discard 2. Now if it was me, I would have let Snapcaster resolve into play, and that way he could have had his Oath of Druids be able to have a creature in play, and then he could Oath a Grizzlebrand into play, and he could have just countered the Time Walk. But Brian Kelley is a much stronger vintage player, so there may be a reason, but that's what I would have planned on doing. But now Brian Kelley is going to discard 2 cards. Brian Kelley is still, thinking here. Now he does discard an Ancient Grudge, which he has the ability to flashback and kill potentially a Mana Crypt or a Mox Emerald. He is looking at his Sensei's Divining Top, so he just has all of this card advantage here that he can do, and he can shuffle off of his Flooded Strand, but now he is drawing off of his Sensei's Divining Top, and he has a Jace of his own, and I do not expect him to just be Fate Sealing. I expect him to be using that Jace as a Brainstorm, which looks like that is what he is doing. Now he is Jace Brainstorming off of his, which will put it at 3 loyalty. And he is taking time to do that and putting back 2 cards on top of his library. And it is not looking like this plussing from the turn 1 Jace is going to play out very well for him. Now Brian Kelley is going to play the signature card from his library, an Oath of Druids, but Robert Greene still does not have a creature in play. Robert Greene is going to take his turn and roll the dice to see if he takes damage off of his Mana Crypt, and he is going to go up once again and take a 3rd dice out, going to 13 on his Jace the Mind Sculptor, which seems pretty good, but again, Brian Kelley has the Pyrite Spellbomb, which will keep 1 turn away from the ultimate on Jace. And look at all those permanents on Brian Kelley's side as opposed to all the permanents on Robert Greene's side, so don't let it deceive you. It looks like Brian Kelley is the one advantaged here. Let's see if Robert Greene can pull something out here in the finals of the Vintage Championship. But he just has to pass the turn back to Brian Kelley, who is still unable to activate that Oath of Druids. And I think I saw an Auriok Salvagers in Brian Kelley's hand, so if he can find the Black Lotus between the Pyrite Spellbomb, the Auriok Salvagers, and the Black Lotus, he would be able to just infinitely damage Robert Greene. Brian Kelley is going to +1 his deck Faden to draw 2 and discard 2, and looks like he no longer needs that Sensei's Divining Top. And let's see what Brian Kelley can come up with. Now he is Jace Brainstorming to draw 3 more. He is just seeing so many cards. He still has not found a Forbidden Orchard, which would give Robert Greene a creature, which would then allow him to activate his Oath of Druids. He has not found his own Time Walk either, so everything is looking extremely good for Brian Kelley. He just has so many instant win cards. He just goes ahead and sacrifices his Pyrite Spellbomb to make sure that he cannot activate the Jace on his next turn, and he passes it back to Robert Greene, who rolls the dice for the Mana Crypt, and it looks like he has only taken 3 so far off of it, as Robert Greene is at 17, and he is just going to keep plussing on that. He is not even trying to do anything else, not trying to brainstorm. He is not given up. He activates the Forbidden Orchard and gives him a fairy token at the end of the turn, which is going to allow for Brian Kelley to activate the Oath of Druids on his turn. So let's see what Oath of Druids target is Brian Kelley going to get to activate. Also, if he gets the Black Lotus in his graveyard, he will be able to go for the infinite Auriok Salvager's kill. So Brian Kelley is going to keep flipping over until he hits one of his creatures and he gets his Grizzlebrand. And then he draws for the turn. And again, Robert Greene is not throwing in the towel quite yet. but Grizzlebrand can attack that Jace if he can find his Time Walk, but he is going to steal that Mox Emeralds. The ironic thing is, even if that Jace ultimates, it's not even enough to stop Brian Kelley. He can draw 7 cards off of that Grizzlebrand, and then his hand become his library, so then his library would still be about 10 cards, and then he could even draw 7 more cards off of the Grizzlebrand again. So the Jace ultimate is pretty much irrelevant, and it is not going to be enough to take down the first game here at the Vintage Championship. So it's going to be interesting to see if Brian Kelley even tries to stop the Jace ultimate from going off here. But there are just so many things going on that Brian Kelley is not really worried about the Jace at all at this point, and he is kind of just playing games with Robert Greene, and Robert Greene is not conceding, as this is the finals of the Vintage Championship. And as we sit here and watch Brian Kelley play with his food here for a minute, I just need to mention what the heck is Brian Kelley wearing here with his orange suit at the Vintage Championship. I mean, Brian Kelley is an awesome dude, but what is he wearing? I mean, where did he get that suit? But I must also say, I do love the artwork on his power, and that he got those power alternated like that is very interesting. But he is finally drawing some cards off of his Grizzlebrand. But a repeal on the Jace the Mind Sculptor after all of that is enough to finally get a concession from Robert Greene, and we are on to the next game. This game, Robert Greene is on the play with a Polluted Delta and a Mox Sapphire. It's always great to start with a turn 1 Max Sapphire in Vintage. No power on the play from Brian Kelley, just a turn 1 Volcanic Island, but Robert Greene has nothing on turn 2. He misses a land drop and just passes back, but he does hit a land drop on turn 3 with a Volcanic Island. So far this has been a slow game too, but Brian Kelley has a Polluted Delta of his own, and let's see if he has any spells finally. He goes for a Pyrite Spell Bomb, and it looks like that will resolve. Pyrite Spell Bomb is going to be able to stop a Notion Thief from ever being able to prevent card draw if it stays on the board, but Robert Greene has nothing once again. He is yet to cast any spells other than a Mox Sapphire this game, so Brian Kelley has a Mana Confluence, and he is going to go for an Oath of Druids, and you know Oath of Druids is going to meet a Force of Will, removing a Notion Thief. Will Brian Kelley fight over this Oath of Druids? The answer to that is no, so Oath of Druids is going to hit the bin, and Robert Greene is going to untap and draw, and I see in his hand he has some more counter magic. I saw at least one Force of Will and a Pyroblast, but an Oath of Druids cannot hit a Pyroblast. So if Brian Kelley would have fought over that Oath of Druids, it would have met a Pyroblast, but Brian Kelley is going to go for an Ancient Grudge on that Moss Sapphire, and ouch, that is going to hurt. It missing land drops, and now hitting that Mox Sapphire, and it has Flashback, and it cannot get Pyroblasted. Wow, that is a dagger in the side of Robert Greene. What is he gonna do about that? And it looks like he is going to do something about that, and he is thinking about it, and He is Force of Willing, removing Snapcaster Mage on that Ancient Grudge. Now this is a perplexing play, as Ancient Grudge has flashback, so I'm pretty sure Brian Kelley is going to immediately go for the flashback on that. So one card is removing 3 cards from the sides of Robert Greene. So Brian Kelley is getting a 3-for-1 on Robert Greene, as he's removing Force of Will, Flusterstorm for just Ancient Grudge on the side of Brian Kelley. I'm sure Brian Kelley is perfectly fine with that exchange, but Robert Greene feels it is important to defend his mana base, and he just passes the turn back to Brian Kelley. Brian Kelley has to feel pretty confident about how this game is going so far for him. Robert Greene really needs some of his heavy hitters, such as an Ancestral Recall, to get back into this game. He has not really seen any of that. Now, he is going for a Vampiric Tutor here, and let's see if Brian Kelley is going to let that resolve. But in response, Brian Kelley is going to go for an Ancestral Recall, and Robert Greene is going to go for a Pyroblast on the Ancestral Recall, but he is mental misstepping it, and once again, Brian Kelley just has everything that can possibly have, and Robert Greene just cannot catch a break here, as Brian Kelley draws 3 more cards, and the Vampire Tutor on top of that is countered, so Robert Greene cannot catch a break. Brian Kelley has a full grip of cards, and Robert Greene has just 1 card, so not sure what Robert Greene can do here, honestly. This match is just slowly flipping away. All Robert Greene has is a Yawgmoth's Will. I mean, you put up a good fight, Robert Greene, but as you can see, Brian Kelley just had everything he could possibly want this game. He had all the perfect answers to your questions, all of your Pyroblasts for his non-blue spells. He had the Ancient Grudge and didn't have mana. I mean, just everything he ever wanted he had, so not much you could do, so don't feel too bad. Robert Kelley had an amazing deck for this tournament, so you know, don't feel too bad about it, and he is about to show you his signature kill with the Bomberman combo here, that he is about to dig through time for the Bomberman for the dig through time resolving. Let's see, what can he find here? Can he finally get what he needs to put Robert Greene down and become vintage champion?
Infinite mana, boom. Infinite Pyrite spell bombs, combo assembled. Brian Kelley is your 2015 Vintage World Champion.
Huh? Out of nowhere, just dig into the pieces.
Dig into the combo. It was Lotus Auriok Salvagers.
Great.
I can't believe it. You could have killed me.